In this episode, I wanted to discuss human personhood, that is, who we are as human beings, how we were created, so that in our spiritual struggles to understand ourselves and how we fit into the world, we can have kind of more clarity as to what's going on within us and how we connect into the greater scheme of things, including our connection to God Himself. And so to understand our personhood, I have drawn a triangle here. Human beings are not made in the image and likeness of a triangle. They're made in the image and likeness of God, but this is sort of a theoretical triangle to kind of organize what we're going to be talking about here. Now, one of the things that's very important to understand with human personhood is that all aspects of our personhood are considered, according to the church, equal. There's not one thing that is more important than the other. All three of them are God-given. We were created as one, and therefore all of them are to be equally valued, and they all serve their unique purpose according to God's will. And so we'll start off with the body. The body is our physical manifestation. If you read in the Old Testament, it says that Adam was formed out of the ground, and it is our bodies are our material manifestation of who we are and part of who we are. And it is through the body that we have our five senses. We experience the world through our bodies, and our bodies are kind of that vessel, so to speak, that contain the other aspects as well. We experience, and this is especially important for our spiritual work, is emotions are experienced as bodily sensations. They also have a mental element, and this is where we get into the next part of the body, which is the soul. The soul is also, in Greek, is sometimes referred to as the psyche, where you get psychology. It is the mental aspect of the human being. Our rational behavior comes out of this. It is also the seat by which the bodily senses are processed and given values. And it determines pleasure and pain and threat versus good. And now I want to back up and just say that this format that I'm giving you in the Orthodox Church, various fathers have given different terminologies at different times depending upon what those particular words meant to the people that they were writing to. So you may have an Orthodox theologian who give you terms nous, word, and spirit for the human person. They may have other terminology. I'm just giving you kind of a real, very elementary, non-academic breakdown. But this interrelationship of the body and the soul is still incomplete, because there is a third element to it, which we are formed with, which is spirit. Body, soul, and spirit. Again, going back to the creation story, it says that God breathed into Adam and he became a living soul. This would in Greek be called pneuma. We have a spirit. Sometimes in the church it is referred to as a nous. It's called the eye of the soul. And it is our spiritual faculty, our spiritual element, let's say, by which we actually behold God. Now, down below here in the soul, this is where thoughts occur. So we have sensations, we have thoughts. But here is something that is actually above our intellectual faculties. This is an element that is usually described as being beyond words. It's those sensations that we can't quite get a grip on, can't quite understand how to express, but we know what they are. This is also the element by which, our connection to God occurs. So when we are talking about our spiritual experiences, mere emotions and physical sensations are not what it's all about. Neither is true spirituality just about right thoughts. It's not an intellectual process. It is not something that necessarily comes down to specific intellectual answers, because we are talking about things that are divine, which are above our ability to think and our ability to rationalize, and that comes through the Spirit. And so in a properly functioning human being in communion with God, the Spirit beholds and senses the presence of God, and then that grace is brought in, and the body and the soul receive what they want, or what they need, rather, and so the human person is properly functioning. However, in a fallen state, when we are cut off from God, our spiritual element is left in isolation, and this becomes part of that sensation that we talked about earlier, fear. Fear comes when our spirit is cut off. We no longer have that connection to God, and therefore the body and the soul sort of turn on one another, and this is where the passions begin, and this is where human suffering begins. Now, how that occurs is once this perceptive quality of the Spirit is broken off from God, our perception of ourselves becomes scattered. We have little bits here and there, but we don't really know ourselves. We don't really understand what's going on inside of us. And therefore, we become a mystery even to ourselves. We have emotions that we don't understand, like all of a sudden we find ourselves angry. Other times we find our thoughts are out of control, or we bear conflicting thoughts, let's say. And what the fathers of the church teach us is that in regaining the spiritual connection to God, what we must do is bring all the scattered perceptions of ourselves back into focus. Bring everything in. Now, it is really impossible for us to, let's say, become perfectly aware of ourselves. Think about it. If you're perfectly aware of your body, that means that every moment you would be thinking about every nerve ending and what it's sensing, plus all of your, let's say, physical functions. Now, some physical functions are governed by the soul through the central nervous system in the brain, which is kind of like the antenna connection to the soul. However, there are aspects of the body that go on automatically. There are certain cells that don't need brain signals. For example, the digestive tract does its whole thing, whether the brain is operating or not. So this we're shooting for is to bring our scattered perception of ourselves more into focus, so we have an appropriate awareness of our bodies and what our bodies are telling us, the thoughts that go on in our minds. We want to really kind of, in a certain respect, get rid of as much of the subconscious as possible, and to be perfectly, or as close to perfect as we can, aware of our thoughts, and to also be, reasonably aware of God to the extent that we can. I mean, as an infinite being, He's going to be hard for us to kind of perceive in His totality. However, He has found ways to reveal Himself to us, and that primarily comes to us through Jesus Christ and our communion with Him. So these three elements together make up who we are as human persons, and I hope this will help you in some way understand what's going on inside of you. Take care.